Today's story is going to be a bit of a mind bender towards the end. Before we get into today's video, I just want to let you guys know that this video is for educational purposes only. Please remember to be kind to everybody everywhere in your everyday life, in your home, in the grocery store, and especially in the comment section down below. Please do not show hate to anybody, anywhere. So good morning, good morning, good morning. How is everybody doing today? I hope you all are having an amazing day. I hope you all are having a wonderful week. I hope everybody is feeling good. So sometimes I like doing these cases that are thought-provoking, and today's case is definitely one of them. Make sure you stay to the end of this video because this story is not like any other story I have ever heard of or a case that I've ever heard of before. And just when you think you know what's going to happen, everything is going to change. And I really want to know y'all's opinions. Before we get into it, I did want to let you guys know, if you don't already know, hi, my name is Christina. I do have a second channel, which is Casually Christina, and we just do things way more casually over there. I also have a Patreon. My Patreon's for 18 and up, and over there we just talk about more personal stuff. We go live over there. There's a $2 tier for all the true crime stuff that cannot go onto YouTube due to their terms and policies. That goes over on my Patreon under the $2 tier. Just make sure you read the full about section, what each tier offers before you join. I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and Like to Know It. And Like to Know It is a platform where you can find links to a lot of the things that you guys ask about that I use, that I love. Everything from skincare to hair care to makeup to workout gear, clothing items, all kinds of stuff that I want to link over there. I do. And all of those platforms are linked down in the description box if you would like to come and check me out. Before we go any further, I did want to stop and thank today's sponsor, Factor. Eat stress-free with delicious, ready-to-eat meals from Factor. Every fresh, never frozen meal is chef-crafted, dietitian approved, and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. You get to choose from a weekly menu that has about 35 different options, and they include all kinds of popular things like Calorie Smart, Vegan, Veggie, Protein Plus, and even Keto. And you can also discover more than 60 different add-ons every single week, like breakfast, on-the-go lunch, different snacks, beverages, smoothies, even latte smoothies, which I absolutely love because they have 18 grams of protein as well as a little bit of caffeine for that mid-morning pick-me-up. And these types of options can help you stay fueled and feeling good all day long. So what are you waiting for? You can get started today and fuel up for your summertime goals. Factor Meals eliminates the hassle of any kind of prepping or cooking or cleaning or shopping or coming up with your own meal ideas. And if you're trying to stay on track with certain nutrition goals or just making sure that you eat in a more sustainable way, you can simply heat your Factor meal and savor the delicious flavor. If you want to try Factor, all you got to do is go to factor75.com or just click the link down in the description box and use my code 50ChristinaRandall to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first Factor box. Yes, that's code 50ChristinaRandall at factor75.com and you can save today. Thanks again, Factor. So, okay, let me tell y'all about Gina. Gina Grant was born in 1976 to her parents, Charles Grant and Dorothy Mayfield. They lived in Lexington, South Carolina. Lexington is just southwest of South Carolina's capital, Columbia. It has a population of about 24,000 people today, and it is a part of the greater Columbia area and is considered one of the fastest growing cities in that area. It was established back in 1735 and is named Lexington to honor one of the first battle sites of the Revolutionary War, the Battle of Lexington, which wasn't exactly fought in Lexington, South Carolina. They just named it that to honor the original site. But nowadays, this This area is said to have like affordable housing, pretty high rated schools, lots of outdoor activities, and a friendly community that still has a small town feel to it. It's also known for its southern charm and hospitality. Now, back then, Lexington was even smaller, but it was still known as a nice place to live. It was a working class area that had a lot of like little families there. It seemed like a good place to start a family and to raise one. Charles, Gina's father, was a civil engineer. Now, Gina's mother, Dorothy, she was a secretary at a bank, and they worked really hard to provide for their family. Gina had one sister, 23-year-old Dana, and she was actually 9 years older than Gina. Dana worked as a nurse at the Lexington Medical Center. Growing up, Gina was known as like a very nice young lady. She was pretty popular and well liked in school, and she was the closest with her father, Charles, like versus her mom. She was really close with her dad. However, sadly, her father, Charles, passed away from lung cancer when Gina was only 11 years old. She was absolutely devastated. Gina's mother, Dorothy, she had a hard time of handling her husband Charles's passing as well, and she reportedly blamed Gina for it, or at least like took out her anger or her frustration on her youngest daughter. So you got to think, you've got Dorothy and her husband Charles. They've got two girls. One is 9 years older than Gina, who is the youngest, but she's already a nurse. She's already out of the house working. And so it's just basically the parents raising Gina. He passes away from lung cancer. The mom's having a hard time psychologically, emotionally, and she begins to allegedly take it out on her youngest, which was Gina. It is said that she would constantly talk down to Gina, and that she even refused to let Gina display pictures of her father around the house. Dorothy, she really struggled with her own problems throughout all of this too. I mean, it is said she really enjoyed drinking, and she enjoyed drinking a lot. Allegedly, she indulged heavily every single day to the point where Gina and Dana, the older sister, were left alone for days on end while their mother spent time with her new boyfriend, and then the next new boyfriend, and then the next new boyfriend. She just had boyfriend after boyfriend after boyfriend. And it's been reported that Gina's school's principal at the time said that Gina saw things that she should have never seen, especially at her age. So at this point, Gina has really been going through it. As the years went by, things only continued to get worse between Gina and her mother. Dorothy would become really angry, and it is said that she was pretty mean towards Gina nearly every single night before her mom would just like pass out. Friends said that they began noticing marks on Gina, and at one point, Gina ended up in crutches. Like just out of the blue, she shows up at school with crutches. It got so bad that Gina tried running away twice, but she was caught and she ended up being brought right back home both times. Now, despite all of this, Gina was still doing really well in school, and I'm talking about like really well. She was a gifted student who was loved by her teachers, and she was her school's first female student body president when she was in the 8th grade. Gina enjoyed playing tennis, and she really loved being on the cheerleading team. She really dreamed of becoming a Supreme Court justice or doctor one day. Sadly, though, something happened that changed the course of Gina's life forever. On September 13th of 1990, 14-year-old Gina and her 43-year-old mother, Dorothy, got into an explosive argument over Gina's boyfriend, who was a 16-year-old young man named Jack Hook. Dorothy had told Gina that she was not allowed to see him anymore, but that did not stop Gina from sneaking around and seeing her boyfriend, like a typical young high school student would do with her young high school boyfriend. And it probably honestly only made her want to see her boyfriend even more, especially with all the drama that Gina was dealing with at home with her mom. Now, Jack, her boyfriend, was on the varsity football team, but he wasn't exactly the best student. He was often in trouble, and he already had a record for petty things like vandalism. Gina had allegedly been sneaking him into her room at nighttime for little sleepovers, and she was staying out all times of the night and even sometimes over the night with him. And so, as you can imagine, this was definitely a sore subject for Gina and her mother. This was a subject that they argued about all the time. But this argument on this particular day was much different. The argument escalated further than any of their other arguments had before, and it got so bad that Gina just completely snapped. She ended up grabbing a crystal candlestick holder, and she ended up hitting her mother 13 times over the head with it. Now, after her mother stopped moving, we'll say that, Gina kind of came to out of this panic or snapped incident that she had, and she decided she needed to clean up the mess. This is when she started to mop up the red fluid, and she hid the rest of the evidence in a trash bag that she ended up putting in her bedroom closet. She then allegedly tried to stage the scene to make it look like her mother Dorothy had done what she had done to herself, and she had ended it all herself. Gina ended up putting a knife in her mother's hand, and using her mother's hand, pushed it into Dorothy's neck. Not long after this, Dana, Gina's older sister, arrived back home. Now, when she got home, all of the doors to the house was locked. So she goes to the front door, the door's locked. Okay, nobody's answering. She goes around back, nobody's answering. So she kind of starts to panic because she's like, somebody's here. My mom's here, somebody's here. Nobody's answering the door. She even tried opening the door with her key, but it seemed like something was blocking the door or holding the door shut, which Dana thought was super suspicious. And this is what made her end up calling 911. Now, when the officers arrived, they found Gina standing outside in an agitated state. She claimed that she and her mother had gotten into a fight and that her mom might be hurt. Officers went inside, they assessed the scene, and it did not take them long to realize that the scene had definitely been staged. I mean, they could clearly see that something had happened to Dorothy in the kitchen before she was drugged into the dining room. I mean, they could tell that the scene had been cleaned up and that Dorothy could not have been the one to use that sharp object on herself. And so they set their sights immediately on Gina as their prime suspect. Now, in her interviews with the investigators that night, Gina ended up changing her story multiple times. And at first, she said that her mother Dorothy was super drunk and she attacked her. She fell down the stairs and then she stabbed herself in the throat after saying, "One of us has got to go." Then Gina told the officers that her boyfriend Jack did it. However, when they went and talked to Jack, Jack denied any involvement and later said that he did not even know Dorothy had been taking her anger out on Gina this whole time, or basically being to Gina. The investigators found the candlestick and all the soaked towels with the red bodily fluids on them that Gina had used to try to clean up the mess. They found them in Gina's closet where she had hid them. And this is where they were able to determine that the candlestick was the actual object that was used on Dorothy to end her life. The medical examiner said that the first blow was actually to the back of Dorothy's head. Now, at this point, Gina ended up confessing that she did it and that she used the candlestick on her mother in self-defense. But the investigators say that Gina wasn't frantic like they expected her to be when she was telling her stories. They said that she was dry-eyed, she was very polite, she was calm, and that she only cried a little when she was told that she would not be going home that night. So she's recanting this story to the investigators, and she's not like, okay, I'll tell you the truth. This happened and she attacked me. Or however they expected her to act is what it sounded like. They were expecting her to be frantic. She was calm and, yes, sir, I did do it. Yes, and so they're confused by this. Because remember, she's a teenager at this point. But Gina's family actually ended up standing by her side. I mean, her sister and even her mother's parents, her grandmother, ended up giving a statement to the media saying that Gina was her precious baby. At Dorothy's funeral, Dorothy's father, Gina's grandfather, was even affectionate towards Gina and told her that he wished her well. When I saw that, it kind of reminded me of the Menendez brothers situation, right? Like the Menendez brothers' parents, Jose and Kitty's family, stood by the Menendez brothers the whole time and still to this day. Nevertheless, at Gina's trial, the prosecution argued that what Gina did to Dorothy was cold, calculated. The sheriff, whose daughter was actually in the same class as Gina, even said that he believed that Gina committed a carefully planned and particularly brutal that she knew that she would get away with. Now, Gina's defense team argued the complete opposite. They relied heavily on the allegations of abuse and they basically said that Gina was only defending herself. They ended up presenting evidence that at the time of Dorothy's death, her blood alcohol level was at a 30, which is literally near fatal levels. However, the prosecution argued that there was absolutely no evidence that Gina had actually been physically abused. They claimed that Gina hadn't said anything to anyone about problems at home until a few days before the incident happened. She said that she had been out water skiing with a friend and her family when she suddenly said that she was scared her mother was going to kill her. Her friend's mother actually ended up calling the sheriff's office, but was allegedly told that there was nothing that they could do unless something actually happened. And I truly believe all of this, especially back then. And I don't know how it is now, because I'm not a kid in the system. I was for a long time in my life. But I could only even imagine back then that, I feel for this situation. However, this led the investigators to believe that she was already planning to do what she did and that she was already setting up her defense. Gina's changing her stories were used against her, specifically the one where she claimed that her boyfriend Jack was the one who did it. The prosecution presented a series of recorded phone calls where Gina can actually be heard talking to Jack's mother and saying multiple times that Jack was innocent and that he was not even there when the incident happened. So then in January of 1991, Gina ended up changing her plea to no contest for a charge of involuntary manslaughter. She ended up receiving a sentence of 1 year in juvenile detention. And remember, she was 14 when the incident happened. Jack pled no contest to being an accessory after his fingerprints were actually found on the knife. The investigators believe that he may have actually helped Gina stage and clean up the scene after the incident happened. Jack claimed that he was at the house all the time, so it shouldn't have been a surprise that his fingerprints were found there. And Jack's lawyer even claimed that one might be able to understand why Gina did what she did to her mother because of their toxic relationship. But why would she then go on to stage the scene, hide the evidence, and try to frame her boyfriend for it? Jack ended up serving a year in juvenile detention as well, and Gina ended up serving about 8 months in a juvenile detention center before she got out, and she moved to Cambridge, Massachusetts to live with her aunt and her uncle. However, she did end up being put in like this transitional home that, so she did the 8 months in juvie, and then she went into this transitional home to kind of like step her toe into the water of the free world, and then went to live with her aunt and uncle. However, once she moved in with her aunt and uncle, they apparently weren't getting along themselves, so Gina ended up moving out and living on her own. Now, remember when I said earlier that this case was going to be thought-provoking? Well, here is a little twist, and this is the part that I really want to know y'all's opinion about. When Gina got settled in Cambridge, she realized that no one there knew her story. So she's like in a new place. Remember, no internet back then. Nobody knows about her past. Nothing. This was actually an opportunity for her to completely start over. So she ended up getting enrolled in a new high school, and she did extremely well. Remember in the beginning of the video, I said that she was even doing really good in school back at her other school as well. So in this new school, she was an honor roll student with an IQ of 150. She ended up becoming the co-captain of the tennis team. She ended up becoming a member of the academic team, and she was a volunteer tutor for underprivileged students. So she was doing a lot and a lot of good stuff. Because she did so well, Gina felt like she had every opportunity to go to an Ivy League school. So she ended up setting her sights on Harvard. In 1994, Gina applied to Harvard, and in her application essay, she described herself as a troubled orphan who had endured impossible hardship and still somehow came out of it. During an interview with Harvard, she actually mentioned that her mother had tragically passed in an accident, but she didn't tell the people at Harvard how her mother passed or really like who was responsible for this like accident. Well, Gina ended up being accepted into Harvard, and she was even granted early admission. However, in the spring of 1995, the school received several anonymous mailed news article clippings about what Gina had done. It is rumored that her aunt and her uncle may have been the ones that sent these news clippings into the school. And I just have to think, if they did, I think there are some people out there that know what it's like for your own people to try to pull you down. Right? Like crazy. She did all this work, put all this work in at this point. She got accepted into Harvard, and somebody who it is rumored to be her own aunt and uncle, the ones that she was going to live with, but they ended up having issues, so she moves out on her own. She's still doing well, starts mailing in newspaper clippings to Harvard. Well, Harvard ended up holding a public debate about whether or not to allow Gina to stay admitted there.
Whether Harvard should admit Gina Grant. Although that's the formal topic title, I think the real question is whether Harvard should have rescinded Gina Grant's offer of admission in the first place. This is an event at Harvard that has gathered national attention in the media. The New York Times wrote a lead editorial not in favor of Harvard's decision and stating that Harvard should not have rescinded their offer of admission to Gina Grant. It has received national press attention throughout the country, and in my mind, the reason for that is partially because of sympathies for and against Gina, but also because this debate raises many interesting questions about the way that we treat juvenile criminals or people who have pled guilty to juvenile crimes in America after they've served their official times. And it raises more questions about social responsibility and child criminals in general. And that is the reason for tonight's debate. This is something about which the Harvard campus is surprisingly split. Usually Harvard is thought of and tends to be a pretty liberal university, but in a poll conducted by the Harvard Independent last week of about 1,500 Harvard students, 54% of the students here responded yes to the question, do you think that Harvard should have rescinded Gina Grant's admission, whereas 46% responded no.
And ultimately, officials decided to rescind her admission on the grounds that she made material misrepresentations of herself. So all of that, and they ended up basically kicking her out. After word got out that Gina's offer had been rescinded, there was a large public outcry by some Harvard students and even the general public. I mean, they believed that Gina was being discriminated against, especially because Gina was a juvenile when this incident happened, and juvenile records are supposed to be sealed in order to allow the juvenile offenders to have a second chance at life. In fact, Gina's name should not have even been released when she was arrested, but the sheriff who handled the whole entire situation released Gina's name immediately after her arrest, which is why there were so many news articles about her. However, Harvard is a private intuition, so legally, they can basically do whatever they want to do. They can reject applications with a past like Gina's, or they can accept whoever they want to accept because they are their own institution. Now, while her story was pretty big in the media, Gina did not really like to speak out or defend herself. She reportedly ended up turning down a bunch of book offers. She turned down different movie contracts and different TV interviews. Instead, she put out a statement that said, I deal with this tragedy every day on a personal level. It serves no good purpose for anyone else to dredge up the pain of my childhood. In addition, I have no wish to defame my mother's memory by detailing any of it. Man, that touched my heart when I heard that, all of that, because I think about the Gypsy Rose situation, and immediately since she's gotten out of prison, I'm not saying what she's doing is wrong by no means. Gypsy Rose had cameras following her as soon as she got out the prison gates, right? And this young lady was just in school, just working her butt off, worked her way all the way into Harvard, ended up getting kicked out, and was offered book deals. Could probably be in a situation right now where she doesn't have to work or never had to work again, and she turned it all down and then even refused to speak badly about her mother again afterwards. Gina did go on to accept an offer to enroll at Tufts University, where she reportedly really enjoyed her time there, but I could not find anything out there about Gina after college or how she's doing. So what do you think? Do you think that she intentionally ended her mom's life, or do you think it was self-defense? Should Harvard have let her in or let her stay there? Or was she just a very intelligent manipulator? Or was she an innocent child who just snapped after everything she had been through? I believe in second chances. I truly do. In the public, for the most part. There are some situations that I believe when it comes to the public, there's no second chances, right? God will forgive you and Jesus will forgive you. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about being out into the public. And it really sounds like this young lady, after just 8 months, got out and completely, it sounds like her mother may have actually been the problem. Because then she got out and continued on her path and did wonderful, even going up into being accepted into Harvard and getting early admission into Harvard. And then to be kicked out of Harvard, embarrassed in her new town because of whoever it was sent in these clippings. And she still kept her decorum and still protected her mother. And I don't know, it sounds like, unfortunately, in this situation, her mother really was the problem. And as hard as it was, it sounds like she handled it in a way I may not have been able to. I don't know. So sad. But at the end of the day, too, Harvard does have a right to kick out whoever and I stand by that as well. If you're going to go to a certain school, they ought to be able to accept who they want and hold you to a standard. And if part of their standard is that you don't end your parent's life, that's part of their standard too. So, a lot of us, and I know some of y'all are out there like this as well, have made bad choices in your life, or you've made mistakes, or you've done things and you've changed your lives. But you know what? The things that I have done, getting in trouble when I was younger, they still affect me to this day. And I'm 40 years old and I have to live with it. It just is what it is. I made those choices and I have to live with it. And unfortunately, Gina, young and probably overwhelmed and scared and impulsive, made a horrible choice that not only she has to live with, but is still affecting her for the rest of her life. Let me know what y'all think in the comment section down below and be so interested to hear what you think. Other than that, I love y'all. Thank y'all so much for watching this video, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Love you guys. Bye.